Welcome back to Laser Focused Solutions, folks. Christopher Godwin here, your host. This is episode 41, and we have a special guest on for the first time. It's having a guest on the show. My speaker needs no introduction, but we'll give him one. I'll do my best to give you to share his remarkable journey. So Mike, if I'm not mistaken, you have 13 rental properties now. You live in Seattle. You have invested in Gary, Indiana, Chicago, and in Seattle. You're a single father. You're dedicated to a full-time officer. You also have a YouTube channel with close to 10,000 subscribers. You collaborate, should I say, with many on YouTube, such as Mike Zuber, Dion McNeeley, and Lumberjack Landlord, helping others in their financial independence. Is that correct?
Everything's correct. With the 13 rental properties, it's a total of 27 units because I got a 5-plex, 4-plex, 2 3-plexes, 4 duplexes, and 7 single-family homes. So it adds up to 27 units when you put it all together.
Okay, so 13 actual doors, but they all. So you have
13 buildings.
13 buildings, right? So you have some quads in there, huh?
Yeah, I got 1 4-plex, 1 5-plex.
Oh, the 5. Wow. Now, how does that work for the 5 for financing? Is that different?
So it's a great question. On the 5-plex, it is different. When you do commercial buildings, anything 5 units or more, you have to go with some sort of commercial lender. A regular mortgage is not going to cut it on anything that's 5 and over. What I did on this one, however, was I actually decided to do my first deal with partners, and we raised all the money cash to buy and remodel the building. So the building is literally just wrapped up being remodeled. We bought it for 180, put about 70 into it, so we were all in for 250. The building should be worth about 400. I'm going to target a $450,000 appraisal, which is a $200K equity bump for our bottom line just in a 6-month period. So now that I have a fully paid off building, all I'll be waiting for is to rent it out because a lot of lenders will want to see that it's occupied. So once I get it to 4 or 5 units occupied, I'll go to a lender and I'll say, hey, I got a building worth $450,000. I want to put a mortgage on this building. And there are some places like Convoy Home Loans and Stephen Dow with Velocity Mortgage that will allow you to do 30-year fixed rate debt on up to 8 unit buildings. Wow. So I'll go find some 30-year fixed rate debt. And ideally, most of them will cut you about 70% of the value. So if it's worth $450,000, they should easily cut me a check for around $250 to $275. So what'll end up happening is I'll go to my investors and give every single one of them back all of the money they put in. We'll still own a building that pays us every single month. Won't be a ton, but it'll be a few $100 per person every single month, and they have no money invested in it. And now over the next 10 years, we have a brand new remodeled building that will continue to go up in rent and continue to go up in value, and it costs nobody anything but their time. And so that's the plan for the 5-plex.
Okay. Is that your most recent purchase? Are you in the process of doing that one now?
No, I bought that 5-plex. I bought both a 4-plex and a duplex more recently. So the duplex I bought 100% on my own, and it's another one where I paid $20,000 for it. It was in a bit of a mess. And in Gary, most houses are in a bit of a mess. But I saw this one in person. And what was great about this property is unlike a lot of places in Gary where it's kind of surrounded by other riffraff, this was the only property, as far as I could see in any direction, that was abandoned. It's next to a church, across the street from a nice neighborhood, backs up to an apartment complex. I was like, this one eyesore, if I buy it and fix it, will probably go to $200K in value because it's a duplex. So I bought it for 20. I'm going to put probably 100 into it. So I'll be in for 120. I did private money to borrow that money. And I bare minimum should be like 160. So if I then went to a bank and they wrote me a check for 70%, I get my 120 back. But I really think it's going to be closer to 200K. And I will still only just take the money back that I put in. There's no need to take the excess because then you create such a high monthly mortgage payment for yourself. It doesn't cash flow as well. So I'll just take the money back so that I'm happy with what I got back, pay off my private money lenders. And then I'll have a cash flowing asset that, again, will go up in value, newly remodeled, and rents will continue to increase. So that's the plan for that. And I think that was my most recent purchase. And that was like March, I think.
Are deals harder to find today with the interest rates being higher? Or it sounds like you're doing a lot of strategic
creative financing. Yeah. Deals are harder to find if the only tool on your tool belt is standard financing that you can get from a 30-year conventional mortgage broker. If that is your one tool, deals are harder to find because they don't cash flow right now with very high interest rates. So what you have to do is try to figure out ways to incorporate creative financing in some way or in some manner to essentially cheat because nobody else is doing it. Now you're the only one who can compete with certain properties out there. So that's what I did when I created my slow burr method, which is what I just described about that duplex where I have private money investors. And the burr strategy itself can be usable, although at the end, you're still looking for a 30-year fixed rate debt cash out point. And so the burr strategy being great, I don't recommend for beginners, but it's one way you can kind of fight back against the difficulty of finding good deals. If you're the only person looking at these more complex deals, you have less competition, you could potentially make something work. The turnkey style that I started with in 2018, where you could kind of just buy a completely remodeled property with traditional conventional financing, 20% down, that is almost non-existent right now. There's just so much competition for a property like that.
Yeah. Now, since you've done several rehabs now, have you found yourself with say a list of materials that you use or products that you purchase now? Have you found that sweet spot and get a little more consistent with your flips?
Yeah, I hire out the contractors and I have a couple of different teams that do the work because I have so many projects going at once. I can't wait for one guy to finish it and move to the next. So I have about 3 main contractors and I let them use what they want to use because it's what they like and what they recommend. And now if I still look at what they're actually like, I buy the materials myself. They go to Home Depot, they create a list. I pay for it on the Home Depot Pro account. I can look at everything. If all of a sudden they're buying stuff that's too expensive, then I'd call them out on that. But most of these guys are in the same mindset as me. We do a lot of rental grade. And there are some arguments back and forth about, well, should you do quality? Should you do rental quality? When you're renting to Section 8 tenants like I do, if I spend more money, they'll still destroy it. They'll still damage it. So I would, as much as it sucks, I wish I could put nicer stuff in some of these places. And I don't put bad quality crap in there. But like I will take the lower tier cabinets versus a nicer cabinet because they still might let their dogs freaking chew it apart. And I'd rather lose a $400 cabinet than a $900 cabinet.
Sure.
Some things you still have to put in quality. Like I'll do mid-grade windows, things like that. Flooring, I'll spend good money on the flooring because I just want it to last longer. And dogs don't chew on flooring, though they do pee on it. But yeah, most of the time I just let the actual contractors themselves make the recommendations for what they like. And if there's a problem with it within the first year or two, it's going to be on them to fix, not me.
Sure. Yeah, I like that. That's actually a good idea because I as you know, I own the home repair space. So for me, it makes more sense to pick out my own materials because I can be more efficient with them. And as far as installation goes. I was more curious from an appliance perspective or something like that. If you went standard with I watched Lumberjack Landlord a lot and he's got his rental list, let's call it, right? So I wasn't sure if you were quite there or you were not as rigid.
Well, he's the man and he's got 137 self-owned and self-managed rentals. So he's at a point where he has so many. Like if you have all of the same washer, dryer, refrigerator, well, then when one breaks, you have spare parts. It makes a lot more sense for him to go through that. Another interesting thing is in Gary, Indiana, landlords do not provide appliances. We don't provide washer dryers. We don't provide refrigerators. We don't even provide stoves. Now, like if I happen to inherit one with a house, I'll leave it in there. But in my lease, it will say, this is for your use. No, if it breaks, we don't repair it. If it's just for you to have. And once it's broken, then it's gone and it's on you. The culture there is that everybody brings their own appliances and moves their own stuff in. So I don't actually need a list like that out there.
That's pretty slick. I think that was how the landlord that I was dealing with for a while when we spoke previously, I think that's how he was dealing with some of his college rentals, was basically, bring your own fridge kind of mindset, like, hey, it's left behind here, but I'm not responsible for it kind of thing. And that really removes you from those midnight phone calls.
It certainly does.
Because those are the things that's where my mind was going, right? Was that I'm thinking from that aspect of, okay, how does that work? And so you said you obviously have a team out there. How does that work from a service call perspective? You have people property managing those facilities?
Yep. Yeah. So the tenant would call the property manager or go on their website or text into the automated system, generates a ticket. If it's an emergency, there's a way to contact if it's an emergency. Obviously, they can call if it's an emergency. If it's a fire, flood, or blood, call. But most of the stuff that breaks down usually can wait until the morning to be fixed. So it generates a ticket. And then the property manager sees that, and then she just assigns it to whoever their contractor handyman is that she has on staff, and they go out there and fix the problem. I get a bill, and they notify me if it's going to be over $150, or I might have bumped it to like $250, but there's a dollar amount that I have where if it's going to be something larger, they got to notify me. And if it's something very large, typically I get my own bids as well. They may say, yeah, this roofer, this plumber is quoting 3,000, and then I'll call a couple other ones myself and see if they can be more competitive. And I've managed to get costs down quite a bit on larger projects when I've just gone out and bid it out a couple of times. So that's always smart to do. I recommend people, if it's over like $3,000, you should probably get multiple bids.
Sure. Yeah. Now, do you see yourself continuing to scale like the Lumberjack Landlord, or are you going to kind of settle down like Dion and just sit back and
no, I'll scale. This year is a stabilization year for me.
Okay.
So I bought 11 units in the first 3 months of this year, and I bought 2 units in October of last year. So like 13 units I put on in like a 6-month period. All of them had to be remodeled, all of them. And again, I only have 3 teams. I had 4 new buildings, and these guys can't work just exclusively for me. I tell everybody about my team, so they're actually working for other people. So this entire year is a get everything remodeled and get everything occupied, so that I'm firing on all cylinders. And once I'm firing on all cylinders and I'm bringing in that level of income, then I might whack off a couple of properties that have some debt on them. I might say, all right, I'm going to whack this one. I'm going to whack that one. But ultimately at that point, probably next year is when I'll move back into buying more properties. And yes, I will continue to scale forever. Always.
That's awesome. So is it true what they say about the debt snowball? And there's an opposite effect I hear when it comes to actually becoming an investor, where you actually, it sounds like now that you got proof of concept, you got private equity money coming your way, you got people out there that you're reaching, relationships that you've built, conversations that you've had. Now deals are, I mean, I'm not saying they're falling on your lap, but they're certainly more available to you than they were when you were first, trying to figure it all out. Is that fair?
Yeah, I can turn the spigot on and off whenever I want. I can just be like, all right, I'm looking, and I know who to go to, where to look, and how to ask, versus I didn't have those skills day one. But those skills take time to develop. Watching channels like yours, like mine, like some of the other guys you've mentioned will help you learn quicker. But ultimately, the networking aspect of it, meeting the right people and getting the proof of concept just takes time. And yes, it is an exponential growth curve, which is obviously like this. And when we talk about the income snowball or the debt snowball, but the income snowball is the inverse of that exponential curve. It just picks up speed as it starts to go, and things happen faster and faster.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think I can relate to that from owning my own home repair business. As I said to you, I was slower in the first of the year. I kind of hit that sophomore slump, let's call it. And as a little bit of what I did to myself, right? I think I shared with you offline. Prior was that, I put my head down. I had a lot of backlog of business. I felt my belly was full of work, let's call it. I went and did all that work, and I looked up and I went, hey, I'm hungry and there's nothing to do. You know what I mean? So I had to get right back into it. So, you really got to make sure, but with that being said, it was much easier to retool and get my workflow back up because I already had in my database, 200 plus customers and clients that I could tap into from a marketing perspective. Like, hey, it's that time of year again. Let's do some painting or whatever it looks like from a marketing perspective. So I was very fortunate to have that. And now here I am 8 months later, 7 months later into the year. And now I'm 5 weeks booked out. I'm using a few subcontractors to do some stuff for me. And I'm looking to potentially hire full-time staff in-house or get some more subs. And I just started tapping into paid marketing, which is a whole nother animal, right? That really kind of, takes that Google algorithm and just puts it out there, into the masses. So,
right.
I got a weird call 2 weeks ago. I thought I was being pranked, actually. So I have a call center that answers my calls for me. That basically I can't be the guy that's out there turning wrenches and answering the phone too. And I want to be professional in how I, go to market. So on my website, all my advertising that I have, it gives my phone number. They call that number, it goes in, and that message gets recorded. So I got a call in, it said, hey, I got a screw stripped out. And it was Friday evening, and the guy had to have it removed this evening. And I'm like, what? So I call up and I'm like, hey, where are you located? And he said, New York. And I'm like, New York? I'm like, sir, I'm in Delaware. And he's like, no, I'm in New York. My building is in Delaware. So that just goes to show you, you never know, right? That guy Googled from New York and found me and said, you hit number one. you answered your phone professionally, your team did, and I needed to talk to somebody. And while I was waiting for you to call, I called 3 other companies and I got voicemail. I got a 820 rings and nobody even answered. So you're my guy, basically, right?
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
gave him my rates, I gave him my minimum charge, and he said, so I can see you at 9 o'clock tonight to help me remove this screw from my facility because I have to have this piece of equipment removed. And I went, yep, I'm your
I'll be
guy.
there.
You know what I mean? And what's
That's a
wild is, like I said, you never know what you're going to walk into. This, so I get there, I remove that screw. I had it out in 18 minutes, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy is going to potentially tell me, well, can you work me a deal on the number that you gave me because it was an over the phone number and you kind of got it done sooner. And I was going to have to explain to him that, hey, you're paying for the value, right? You're paying for
right.
me to know what to do with that screw, even
Right.
though it was a strip screw, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I would have had to go down that road, but he was more than happy to pay me, and then said, "Do you want to do more work for me?"
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And it's like, that just goes to show you, you never know how, like you said, just the professionalism that you put out there, it matters. The clients care, and it was pretty cool to get a phone call, like I said, from a guy from New York that drove 3.5 hours down just to watch me, you know, finagle a screw out of something. You know what I mean?
Dude,
So,
the internet marketing's working. That's all I can say. Great job.
yeah. So what do you give somebody that's young? I wouldn't say young. I'm 45 today, actually, but I mean, I'm younger in the rental game, right? I want to get into the market. I want to get into the game. As you know, it's so funny how I watch people like yourself and others that are doing it, right? And it's like, I could do that. You know what I mean? It just creative financing, just work the deal out. And
Yep.
I put it on a spreadsheet. I have the conversation, but it's not a deal until it's a deal, right? And I think me and you talked a while ago, and that one, the guy talked the right talk, but unfortunately, he was very emotionally invested in his properties to where I don't think he could walk away from them. I really don't.
Mhm.
So it's one of those things where I got an opportunity to possibly just call him back and say, hey, it's been a couple of years. I'm not sure if you've done anything. Does it make any sense to talk now? Maybe
Mhm.
now he's a little bit more serious about wanting to move on because, it's the same second verse, same as the first kind of analogy. But also, not only those, but just others in the market, as you said, you know, find a buy box is the first thing I know I got to do, right? But when it comes to proof of concept and getting private money lenders and that kind of stuff, that's where I get a little bit, glazed over and such. Because, like you said, I don't have that capital to put down on a house, on a rental property. Um, do I have the means to fix it up? Sure. Do I have the desire? Absolutely. You know what I mean? And I think those are two things that matter, right? There's a lot of people that say they want to do it and they won't. But if you were, in my shoes, what are some things that you would do to potentially get into the rental game?
You're in a very unique position because of your skill set and because of your job. Most people that I would tell to get started I would not tell them to start with any type of fix and flip or repair type projects. That's not the case for you. You know what you're doing. You know how to bid it out. And you can eat it in the shorts if you're wrong when it comes to labor, unlike
Yeah.
most people. What I would tell you, the number one thing you should be doing is attending every local real estate meetup you can and whoring yourself out as the best landlord handyman on the face of the planet. This is going to do you a couple things for you. Number one, it's going to help your business. Hopefully, you're going to get more leads. People are always looking for a good handyman. Real estate investors, landlords are always looking for good contractors, good handyman, people who answer their phone in the middle of the night, people who will come out and do the extra work because we have problems that crop up. People who aren't going to lie to us, aren't going to be dishonest to us. So number one, attend all of the local real estate meetups in like a 50 to 75-mile area that you possibly can, and talk to everybody and tell them what you do. Number two, this is going to now allow you to network exclusively with investors who have properties, and you're going to be able to figure out the older folks who are trying to retire and get out of the game. And if you're doing a good job for them for 6 months to a year, they like you, you're the young guy, you're honest, you do a great job. That's when you proposition them with seller financing. That's when you start having those conversations of how can I get to where you are? What can I do to become an investor like you? And as you make actual friends with people, someone is probably going to say, well, I'll seller finance you this building or that building. It needs a lot of work, but I think you can handle it, Chris. And that's going to be your ticket to get in even during these difficult times. Sure, you can keep looking at the market and seeing if you can find a turnkey and regular finance it. It's possible, very unlikely. You typically have to find different means of networking, and you have one of the best of all, which is that you can go out and see properties and get an intimate understanding of these properties while helping these investors who desperately need you. That's what I would do if I was you. And then number three, I would make sure that what I'm also doing is you got this challenge to do these videos a day, every day for 90 days or 45 days, make the videos title specific to your city and state. So it'd be like that incident you talked about. Saved a New Yorker with a major problem in construction, something like that. Although maybe putting New York in the title might actually mess it up. Don't do that. But I would just say, what city do you live in Delaware?
Middletown, Delaware. Yep.
Middletown. All right. So for me, it would be swapping out an AC unit in Middletown, Delaware, building a new room or a house add-on or something like that in Middletown, Delaware, and then throw your county in there a couple of times, throw the state in there a few times. Middletown, Delaware's #1 landlord contractor. Middletown, Delaware's #1 landlord handyman. And freaking brand yourself like you can have more than just laser focus solutions. Like I'm Millennial Mike, but I'm also the king of Gary, right? You can have more than one moniker going at a time. So that's what I would do, because as you build a presence online, not nationally, but for your little community, when anybody types in those words into Google, and the second largest search engine on the planet is YouTube.
Yeah. When
people type in handyman, Middletown, Delaware, you will pop up. And if you've got a whole bunch of videos that talk about how you've helped a real estate investor, or I saved a landlord in Middletown, Delaware with his major problem, dude, all the traffic will go to you.
Love it. Love it. Well, Mike, I can't thank you enough for your time, my friend. I really do appreciate it.
Happy to be here, man. Thank you.
All right, buddy. Let's get together soon.